right, everyone, welcome back to Grit Daily Startup Show. I'm your host again, Jordan French, back of a super exciting guest. There's a lot of layers perhaps to unpack, but spirits will be certainly one of them. Jeff Mahony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
Let's jump right in. NEFT Vodka. We already got a question or two on it from our audience. For those who are a little less initiated, just give us some of the background on it specifically. We know it's vodka. We know it looks really interesting, which already gives you an idea where I'm headed. Jeff.
Well, the form factor is a brand new form factor. It's a barrel. It's designed to look like a 55-gallon oil drum. The purpose of that drum is to keep the liquid cool for longer periods. It's a triple-lined barrel. We also wanted to create some utility in terms of not being breakable. So it's an unbreakable barrel. But our primary focus was sustainability. So it's 3 times more recyclable than glass. It has 1/3 the weight, so its carbon footprint as you're transporting around the world is 1/3 of glass. It is 100% recyclable, where glass is not. Glass, and most people don't know this, but anytime there's color in glass, that glass must go back into the trash stream. It can't be recycled. So we had some very definitive sort of focus on what we wanted the utility of that barrel to be. But of course, anybody's only going to buy one of those unless there's something interesting inside of it. So we set a course here to create a only two ingredients, of vodka. Something that was smooth, that was sippable, that had the flavor profile that we could create mixed drinks or drink neat and still enjoy it. So unlike all the other vodkas on the markets who add glycerins and fructose and a variety of other additives in order to cut the bite, we decided let's just build something from the ground up that doesn't have the bite, that actually tastes good, that you can enjoy anywhere because of that barrel. But you're moving now towards a sipping vodka. All categories have some sipping version. Spirits were originally designed to be sipping. Vodka has deviated from that in the last centuries, and we're bringing it back. We want a sipping vodka that is clean and crisp and made from high quality ingredients. That's NEFT.
Yeah, a lot we can unpack there. I do wanna pin that word sipping and sort of the instructions around how we drink. Let's pin that and set that aside for a second. We'll bring it back in. But one thing that you shared were, really what we see as entrepreneurs, assumptions around the business, assumptions around a market, going after sustainability as perhaps a tenet. We do see a lot of entrepreneurs do that. Some of the other facets, though, were relative to the drink space, Jeff, they're kind of wild. Like the trade dress that you spoke of, at least that's how we describe it. Coming from that being from an oil barrel, using only 2 ingredients, no additives. What is resonating best? We're so curious. What's resonating among those, if you could share with the market so far?
So what's resonating right now is we're about a 70-30 split between male and female. The barrel is resonating strongly with the males. The juice is resonating strongly with both genders. And we're finding that the gluten-free aspect, the sugar-free aspect, the cleanliness of the product is resonating with the female demographic. When you're looking at the on-premise locations like bars and restaurants, we're finding that a variety of different drinks on menus is what's resonating with females, whereas males are coming in and drinking it neat or on the rocks. We've done some anecdote focus groups, and we're finding that females in general like to go to the menu, quote unquote, we want something I can't get at home. Whereas males will walk in, already have their mind set, they know what it is that they like, and they're coming to the table or bar and asking for NEFT on the rocks. We're finding that wait staff is resonating with the barrel, and we'll bring it out. We'll love to show it to their patrons. We do have various SKUs, including a 100 ml. So the 100 ml is what we affectionately call the double shot.
Mm.
And that's arriving on tables in its form factor. And so bars and restaurants are building deliverables around the actual form factor for delivery to the table. So there's a lot of uptake from both the patrons and consumers and the wait staff and bartenders who are pushing the product, because they believe for the first time that there is a sipping vodka, there's just a surprise element when they experience this vodka. They're not used to something that tastes so good and doesn't have the bite, and so they're pushing it. So that's the long answer.
Appreciate that. We can go longer, and I think we will just a bit just to tease that out a bit more. You mentioned wait staff and tables. That certainly means that this is available at probably somewhere relatively local to all of us, at least stateside. Can you just maybe share one or two, in case someone literally wants to go out, tonight, so to speak, to find NEFT?
Sure, you can find it at most restaurants in the South Bay, Los Angeles, scattered across Texas, California, New York, Florida, New Jersey, Connecticut, Georgia. We're in 22 other countries as well. You can find this at most of your higher end restaurants, and you can find it at the retailers like Ralph's, etc. You can go online and find it as in many, many different online facilities. We have our own online as well, so you can find that at one of our Shopify sites. So we're sitting in somewhere around 200,000 or 300,000 locations, but we're not nearly ready to sort of say we've saturated the market.
Right, yeah. I think it's the first time for most listeners in this audience. This is the first time that they're going to hear of NEFT. I said also, Jeff, we this interesting concept of sort of the instructions of how to drink and maybe some history there that you can unpack. There are a lot of history buffs out there, or even the history curious. I count myself among at least one of those categories. Let's dive into that a bit more. It's and I'll be a little bit unfair with a compound, maybe two-part question, but I know you'll want to tackle them both. And one is, what is the history behind that? You mentioned that sipping is really the intent behind most hard distilled spirits. That's one. And then, second, is it really an instruction? Are you sort of instructing us in the audience, or those who are interested in drinking or consuming NEFT, to consume it a certain way, or is that sort of like a looser concept? Perhaps almost like an artifact of a religion that's fell by the wayside. And we'd love to understand like how you think about that, Jeff.
Well, you think about spirits, around the 1300s is when vodka, or the water of life, was created, as they used to call it. It's arguable whether it's Russia or Poland. Most people believe that it's Poland who have really drilled into this. But at that time, and when tequila was developing and a variety of other spirits were slowly coming onto the scene, they were medicinal. They were actually produced to be consumed neat. Children were fed these. Particularly in the Eastern European bloc, you'll see vodka, again, the water of life. They thought this was a medicinal support service, right? So the concept of mixers and all those things, that's a relatively new concept historically. So these spirits were designed to be drank neat as a sipping alcohol. You look at tequilas and the scotches and the bourbons, and the list goes on about that. But vodka has missed that, because vodka was traditionally in the Eastern European blocs. You're looking at communism and socialism. There was no real focus on bringing something good to the consumer. It was just about satiating and doing the minimum. And so you start to see low quality vodkas. You start to see folks in those regions dying at an earlier age than other parts of the world. Many will attribute that to bad vodka, right? I work in the mines, I work in the fields, I come home, I drink bad vodka. That's my life. And so it shortened my life. So We're taking it in a different direction. We're saying, no, vodka was meant to be a clean, white spirit. It was originally made from a variety of different underlying products like potatoes, grains, rye, whatever was around. And it's really sort of focused on the culture there. What are you growing, right? But the first step to most alcohols is some vodka version, right? It's a 95% neutral grain spirit, broken down to a 40% through filtering, etc. There's a wash at the end. But you end up with something that's typically harsh if you don't start with the right ingredients, if you don't make sure that the stills are clean, that you're not doing this in a batch as opposed to a column still. And so there's a variety of different techniques that were lost because there was no purpose for them in that culture. Communism, socialism, as I mentioned, no purpose in creating the best product, just need a product. And so we're taking it in a different direction. And in fact, one of our founders, Ekaterina Kuzmina, who is in Austria, which is where we are distilled, is paying homage to those workers by creating this in that barrel format. So there's a historical perspective there that is sort of a nod to all those hardworking men and women throughout history who had nothing to go to towards solace except a bad vodka. Her stance was, I'm going to give you a good vodka, and I'm going to do it with clean ingredients, but I'm going to give a nod to the 1,000 years or so of folks that have been working hard in those fields and those mines, and now it's time to enjoy something good. So obviously we have a broader reach than just the folks in the Eastern European bloc, but that's the history behind NEFT and the desire to come to the table with something clean. But we also have an altruistic. We are a charity for women and children, and as part of that view of our one world community, where some of us need a little bit of help, we want to do our part with sustainability. So it's not a gimmick for us. For us, it's about truly being faithful to that idea. That meant that we had to deviate from glass. We had to actually go to something that is more expensive to create, but is actually true to the sustainability aspect. It's aluminum and tin and a biodegradable varnish. So we've done our job, we think, in creating something that's back to the roots of sipping, while at the same time making sure that we're taking care of the communities around us in earnest. That
Yeah,
help?
it certainly does. And then part 2, I'll just repeat it. Is it an instruction to sip, or is that sort of like a, maybe a personal taste of yours, or is that perhaps within this rich historical context that you shared?
It is
And
part
it,
of the rich historical context that, when you go to an Eastern European gathering, doesn't have to be a party, you'll find vodka spread across the table and shot glasses. You don't find mixers. It's interesting how there's always a new bottle, right? But it's something that is tradition. You might have a slice of apple, something along those lines. So traditionally, it is sipped. So it's not our instruction, but it is a request. Try it. See what happens. Maybe you'll fall in love with this. Anecdotally, we've seen that. We've won many, many awards, best vodka in the world at various contests in and about the United States and outside the United States. Having said that, you can enjoy a flavor-forward profile. It's not sharp or biting, but it does have a lemongrass sort of peppery feel to it. It's very subtle. It does depend on your DNA whether you taste the pepper or the lemongrass. But you can taste it in a mixed drink as well. So you get, instead of a drink where you're tasting the mix, you can now actually taste the alcohol inside of it and enjoy both sides of it. So, as I was mentioning earlier, men are tending towards the sipping version, women are tending towards that mixed version, but you're getting a flavor-forward profile either way that I think both are enjoying.
Yeah, we hear that. And then just to drill down, because a barrel is so fascinating. You mentioned earlier that the again, what we call the trade dress, you call it the form factor. It looks like a barrel of oil. How did you arrive at that design?
We were looking for something that was unbreakable because we wanted to extend this into pools, backyards, hiking, wherever it is that you might enjoy your life as a celebration of that journey. Bring something good along with you. You can't bring glass. You can't bring glass poolside. You can't bring glass to the mountaintop. None of those things are going to work. The best and most structural safe version of this is round, right? Sphere is the most unbreakable, the strongest sort of shape that we have. A column is the next. After that is the rectangle, etc. Right? So there are weak points in there. So there is an engineering aspect to this. Let's make a barrel. Let's put the ridges on it to make sure that it has that. Let's triple line this, aluminum tin and varnish, to make sure that the liquid is safe for an extended period. But also it creates that utility of being essentially a small cooler. Keeps it cold for 4 to 6 hours, even at poolside. So we were looking for utility as well. The barrels seem to be the form factor, the dress that lend itself best to that. So that's where our focus was. You also had that homage part that I talked about. Most of the time, you found that it was the oil workers in the Siberian continent and those folks that were the ones that were dying early. And so the form factor in the shape of a oil barrel, and neft as a Cyrillic word actually means oil. So we find this in Ukrainian and a variety of other languages. They all know that word means oil. Right? So it lends itself to all the utility, but also the homage. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think it's a cool design. It was super curious where you got it from. And you shared that. Market certainly is the one to decide. How what legs that has. I think a fair point though on your end. That makes for a first buy, Jeff. The second buy and nth buy certainly comes from what's inside of it. Speaking of markets, just to unpack, and I really appreciate you starting there with NEFT. Interesting background that you have. I called it, sort of layers of the onion that we might have here. Um, very loose metaphor, of course. But you have a background in really what is a variety of things. I think preceding NEFT, you'd most closely be associated with early Bitcoin adoption. Do we get that right?
Yeah, we've got a lot of that right. I'm in financial services. I've been working in financial services for the last 35 years. We have a number of global companies that we use to service the banking industry. We built some technologies. My degree is in cognitive science, which was the precursor to artificial intelligence back in the 80s. We've built some significant technologies around blockchain, etc. We do support the cryptocurrency markets as a concept. We are looking for a better solution. Bitcoin is an interesting academic exercise along with Ethereum and a variety of others that are out there, but there's some real world crossover. The reason I mentioned the banks is, how do you get from the crypto markets to the fiat markets and back? Because without that, you don't really have utility in the crypto markets. You have a floating coin, you have something that is useful in a limited set of circumstances. So we are focused on creating something that's useful in a massive set. We want to bring institutional investors into the table. Our blockchains are being used at the government level, both in the United States, Costa Rica, Panama, Bahrain, Pakistan, soon in Dubai, a variety of other places. So we've taken it very, very seriously with the eye towards fulfilling the actual original requirements, which I think Bitcoin took a good stab at,
Mm.
Ethereum took a good stab at, But to come back to the sustainability side, what we call network energy, the amount of energy required to run a Bitcoin network or an Ethereum network or some of the analogous proof of work, proof of stake networks out there is very, very high. And that doesn't mesh with our idea of sustainability. So we've created a low network energy version of this that is much, much faster, that services the speed that the banks require us to service. And so it's a new approach that piggybacks on all the hard and amazing work that the Bitcoins and Ethereums have done. And it's not to say in any way to degrade those work efforts. They are fabulous, fantastic. There's a add-on to that that makes the real world utility, and that's where we're focused. So that's our interest in Bitcoin and the other coins.
Yeah, appreciate that. And for those who are again less initiated or curious about that, what is the name of that network that you put together or working on?
It's called RYT blockchain, and it's based on a brand new consensus model called proof of majority.
Interesting. Proof of majority, RYT blockchain, and then just to unpack that on proof of majority, unpack that. We're familiar with proof of stake. You hear that a lot on this show, on sister shows like cryptocurrency. Proof of work, proof of majority is a little different. Jeff.
Yeah. Well, so one of the original tenets of the academic exercise that we call Bitcoin was to create a distributed ledger. That meant that the entire network should have and contribute to the understanding of what the total data set looks like. We call that a block. But when you find a proof of work or a proof of stake consensus model, what you're doing really is you're limiting the number of people, machines, participants, if you will, in that network that are actually contributing to that understanding. Sometimes we call those validators. In a proof of work, you might see a $20 million rig that is sitting out there designed to cut the next block, to absorb transactions, validate them, and then cut a block out of that. The what the ramification of that is that there are very few players. Bitcoin, as an example, there are about 14 miners in the world that are producing 99.99% of the blocks on that. That is the opposite of distributed. Proof of majority takes a completely different tact. It says that every node, whether you're on a cell phone or on a $20 million rig, it doesn't matter. You have the same ability to create what is the collective understanding of what the next block is based on transaction processing. And that is thus the word majority. We are looking for the majority of the network to agree. And so the nomenclature is pretty simple. I'm not very good at naming things, so I just came up with that.
It's a clear one. Look, NEFT is certainly too. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I'm getting the green flag, from our editors. For those who are out there listening, super curious about NEFT, that's neftvodka.com. That's NEFTVODKA.com. And then Jeff, for people who want to reach you directly, what's the best way for people to get in touch or reach out with
There.
an
Happy to entertain LinkedIn conversations. You can come to the NEFT website. There you can reach the admin. Turns out I'm the admin. Even though there's a few hundred people at this company, I like to monitor the admin email addresses.
Well, that's certainly holding it close to the chest. Really appreciate your time today, Jeff. Thanks for coming on the show. And for everyone out there, you'll see this on your favorite sort of audio tools, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You'll see the article out there in Grit Daily and Apple News. Thanks again, Jeff, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day, Jordan.